Our minds are so powerful that what we focus on reverberates through every aspect of our lives. So why not see what happens when we put our attention on all the good things people are doing? Join me for the good with Theresa G as we start a ripple effect by focusing on all the greatness in the world. Angela Marie Patnode is a transformational coach, a spiritual teacher, and a healer. Angela helps clients break free of anxiety, illness, and stress so they may live with more clarity, peace, and passion. Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
I have to tell everyone how I met you. Was quite serendipitous. I was in my sauna. I always get some amazing thoughts in the sauna. And that day, I realized I had to get a meditation teacher. And I don't know why. I tried to meditate and I just never have really had fallen through with it and had trouble with it. And so that day I got out of the sauna and I Googled meditation classes. And your name popped up, and it just so happened that you were starting a class that very day. And so I called you and I started the class, and I took so much from that class because, now I meditate every day. It's part of my practice, and I have you to thank for that. And one of the things out of many things that I took from that class that really stuck with me was that one of the assignments you gave us was to not engage in bad news porn for a week and come back and report to you how that felt. And that was so huge for me when I went home and I started seeing how much I'm exposed to bad news through social media, through just even me calling my friend and say, "Did you hear what happened to so-and-so?" And then, of course, the news and the newspaper. And it just really left a dent in me. And ever since then, I'm so much more aware of what I expose myself to. And I have to say that, the good with Theresa G, that our whole focus is focusing on the good in life. And I think that seed you planted when you gave us that homework was just amazing for me. And I would love for you to go in more detail about it.
Yeah, I would be happy to share more of that. And another word for it, as some people call it, tragedy porn. And it's something that we're so exposed to every day and such a part of our conversations, we don't even notice that we're in it. And like your experience, just to bring that awareness to it, notice that you're involved in conversations about what's latest on the news or who's doing what or what tragedy happened to this person or that person in your life. That brings your energy down, and it tends to close the heart, and it's junk food. It's literally junk food for the ego to feed on. And it keeps us in a state of survival and a state of fear. And it doesn't allow us to be our highest self. And we can easily shift that by not engaging in it, by not exposing ourselves to it more than is healthy. And your inner guidance is going to tell you when you start to feel a heaviness in your chest, that means you're too much. It's too much. You're taking in too much visually, or you're taking in too much from the auditory, or engaging in conversation in it. And it's not helpful. So I tell folks that engage in it so that you can be active in change in this world, in the environment, or with social justice, but not it be your primary focus all the time, because that will greatly impact your joy, your happiness, and your peace.
And is that why you suggest for a lot of your clients not to read the news and watch the news?
Yes. Yeah. And like I said, it doesn't mean we stick our head in the sand and pretend it's not happening, because we need people to be active, especially right now in our political climate. And we can also temper that and have healthy boundaries for ourselves and our hearts and our minds, because what we read, what we listen to, is what goes into our subconscious mind. And that affects us on a very deep level, much more than we might even be aware of. So it's a really important piece of our path if we're going to be moving towards an awakened and an open heart and an open way of living and feeling more at peace, feeling more joy in our life. That's one of the key pieces that we can do.
And I love it. It's made a huge difference in my life. That's for sure. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started on this path of teaching meditation and coaching? And
Yep, I'd love to. So when I was early on in my 20s, I had a very closed heart. I would call it that. It was very closed. I closed it when I was about 6 years old, which I kind of come to learn is very common for us as humans. We experience something early on and we close our hearts so we don't get hurt again. And so I closed my heart, and I left any kind of spiritual practice behind. Growing up Catholic, I left the church when I was 16, and I didn't know it at the time, but I became an atheist. I was like, there is no God, and we just born and live and we die, and that's it. And life felt somewhat empty, like not somewhat, it felt empty on the inside, even though I was having joy and laughter and I was going on all these worldly adventures. There was definitely a big piece that was missing for me during that time of my life. And when I was 32, I began one morning with some pretty intense anxiety in my chest that I'd never had before. And I didn't know what it was. And I thought cleaning the house would help it go away. And 3 weeks later, I had a panic attack. I'd never had one of those before. I'd never heard of one. And I was lying on the floor, hyperventilating, crying my eyes out, sobbing. And this voice says, you need to get help. And that was a big turning point for me, because I was not someone to ask for help. I was not someone who needed help. I was out to prove myself and to show the world what I could do and be as strong as a man. And here I was lying on the floor, completely out of control, out of sorts, thought I was going crazy. And that was the moment that my heart started to break open and say, you can't keep living like this with a closed heart. It's not your path. It's not working for you. And at that time, I was in a relationship that I wanted it to be right, and it wasn't right, but I kept trying it. I kept staying in it. And for several months, the anxiety continued to get worse and continued to get more intense. And I tried anti-anxiety meds. I tried antidepressants. I lost the will to live. I remember just lying on the couch without any drive for life. I just wanted it all to be over. And what was happening is I kept ignoring the internal voice that's told me to leave the relationship, and I wanted it to work so bad. And finally, 9 months after that panic attack happened, I finally had the courage to listen to that inner voice. And I listened to the voice, and within 3 days of ending that relationship, the anxiety completely went away, and I started to become me. For the first time really in my life, like authentic me, a me with a heart that started to open up.
I think that for some people, this might just blow them away that you were having anxiety because of you were in a relationship that wasn't feeding your spirit or wasn't right for your spirit at the time. But so anxiety can be a sign, it can be a symptom that there needs to be change, instead of something that maybe we need to put a Band-Aid on. Or, I mean, for some people, I think that could be, I would never sit and think, oh, I'm anxious because I'm not happy in my relationship,
Totally.
So that's really interesting to me.
Yeah. And what you just spoke to, Theresa, with the anxiety is there's actually what I've discovered. I'm going to do a little side note here. is what I've discovered is that there's two types of anxiety. There's the anxiety, and this is my own personal experiences. There's anxiety that I experience that is my intuition saying, stop what you're trying to do because it's not in line with your truth or your intuition. It's trying to bring me back to center. And then there's the other anxiety that comes from fear. Fear. It's a different physical feeling that I have. It's different emotional feeling I have. But that may be for either further in the podcast or another podcast to talk about that piece.
How to tell the difference.
How to tell the difference and how to follow that. And I also have it written out in my ebook that I have on my website. The ebook titled From Anxiety to Peace, 3 Simple Steps to a Heart-Centered Meditation Practice. And in there you can read about those two different types of anxiety and how I approach those and working with those. Yeah.
Okay, great. Because that's really important. That's really important because there's anxiety so common today. So to be able to tell the difference between whether it's your internal guidance or if it is fear that's a huge key. I think
it is. It's very important. Yep.
Okay, so let's go back to your story. I'm sorry so you were, let's see, you had left him and your heart center started to open up.
Yeah, and I was seeking different answers, reading books on Buddhism. I was trying to find information on intuition because I knew when the anxiety went away that fast that it was related to my intuition and me not listening to that intuitive voice for so long. I mean, it was probably a couple years that it had been speaking to me. And so I couldn't find much on intuition, but I found a few nuggets. And then I started being drawn to Buddhism and meditation for the first time. And I felt called to learn to meditate. So given my personality, that is the all or nothing personality, I signed up for a 10-day silent retreat, never having meditated before. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty, that's jumping right on in.
And so I go on this 10-day meditation retreat about 3 months after the anxiety stopped and the relationship ended and all that. And I walk in with it like a deer in headlights, like, oh my God, what did I get into? What did I sign up for? This is crazy. But my intuition said, God, this is right. You need to be here.
Because you can't talk at all for 10 days. You don't talk at all.
You can't talk at all. And and also it's probably the strictest meditation retreat you could possibly do in the entire world. Like 10 hours a day of sitting and no eye contact, no talking, no yoga, no exercise. You could walk some on the walking path they have, which I did circles around. I was nicknamed the walker, I was told after.
You're like, whatever it takes to get through. Because honestly, I don't know that I could do that. I just don't know that I could do that. Well, we can do anything we want to, right?
And that's
anything
what
we put our minds to.
How am I going to do this? I'm such an active person. I'm always out hiking and biking, blah, blah, blah. But my heart was calling me like, you need to do this. And that calling is what helped me see through the beliefs that I couldn't do it. And I was at this retreat and I was walking my tush off anytime I queen sitting for yeah.
I would have been walking with you.
And in the first 3 days, I was told if you could just make it through the first 3 days, you'll get through the retreat. And I'm like, okay, good. So the third day comes and I make it through after wanting to leave numerous times. And I stayed through the fourth day and the fifth day, and I'm like, all right, I'm home free. And then the sixth day, and then the eighth day, and the eighth day, and this anxiety started to build, like getting stronger and stronger. I'm like, what is this about?
Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You would think the opposite, you know?
The teachers, and she says, oh, that's that's Sankara, which means the stuff, the energy, the emotions from the past that are coming up that want to be released. And it was the first time I'd heard about that. Now I call it, or another teacher I know calls it spiritual Drano. Meditation is spiritual Drano. It's like when we sit, it allows everything to get flushed out. And so that's what was happening at that time for me. And so she goes, you just need to go have a good cry. And I said, okay. So I walked outside and had a good cry, and I felt such peace. I felt so amazing after that. And I left the retreat after 10 days and felt the deepest peace I'd ever felt in my life. And that was really the first big spiritual experience once I moved through the anxiety piece, which was also really transformative. Like, that was the transformation that began it all, was that panic attack on the floor. And coming out of that meditation retreat, I knew I was different. I knew I was on this different path. Yet I had a lot of my old tendencies of wanting to prove myself. And so I navigated that for a few years and meditated off and on here and there, but I was never really committed to it, and wandered off into other sexy things in my life, jobs overseas and playing outside and fun things. And then I was on this call like, God, I know I'm meant for something more in my life. I've been leading trips in the mountains for many years, which I loved, but I also knew I wanted to serve the world in a deeper way. And I just kept calling and asking, and what is that? And I was frustrated at times and angry at times and depressed at times, looking for an answer to this. And there was a teacher that came through my town of Bozeman, Montana, that he was coming through to give a weekend retreat. And he gave this non-residential retreat. And I went to this retreat thinking, well, what else am I going to do with my life? I might as well go to a retreat. And I go to this retreat, and he says at the end of the retreat, I'm offering this 2-year program for anyone that's interested. I have 2 spots available. And when I was sitting with him over this weekend, he was the most clear teacher I'd ever experienced, like such clarity in his words. And there was something inside me that said, I want to work with this person.
And what's his name again?
Matthew Flickstein.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was offering this program. And again, I said, well, I don't know what else to do with my life. I might as well do this program. And so I signed up for the program, and he was so passionate about his teachings, and he gave us teachings every week. He was based in Virginia, and he'd send us teachings every week that we practice, and he'd say, you need to meditate for 20 minutes today. And I'd be like, I don't have time for that.
That's a long time to start off with. The 20 minutes, it doesn't seem that long, but I loved how you let us start with like 5 minutes or maybe even less. I don't remember, but it was such a nice way to ease into it.
Yeah. And that's how I still start clients and classes, like 5 minutes a day. And this 20 minutes a day, I'm like, oh my God, but I had signed up for this program. So I started with that first month, and I noticed big shifts happening within me in that first month.
What kind of shifts?
I started to feel happy. I started to feel a sense of ease just in that first month. And he would have us write these, what would you call it, reflections at the end of each month of what we were experiencing from the teachings and the meditation. And I remember after the first month, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just write a couple sentences. And I sent it off to him, and he wrote me immediately back. And he says, Angela, if you want to stay in this program, you need to take it seriously. And I got up from my desk, and I was like, how dare he?
Yeah, right.
How dare he say that to me? Like, I'm taking this seriously. No. And I was
the ego.
the ego was fully in reactive mode. I'm stomping around my house, and then my inner wisdom says, he's totally right. And I went, oh, damn it. I don't want him to be right. He's right. He's right. And so my wisdom, my higher self, was like, this program is exactly right for you, and take it seriously and do what he's asking. And so I did. I really committed to it after that. And I knew he was the perfect teacher because he was calling me on my old patterns. And the next month, I sent him this email with like 3 pages typed, single space, all my reflections from the month. And he says, his response was, thank you, much better. And so I was fully committed to this program. And we got teaching, more and more teachings that were so transformative on aging, illness, and death, on gratitude, on compassion, on loving kindness, like all these things I never knew you could learn about. And the second year we had 3-week-long retreats with him in Virginia, and each retreat, I remember the first one going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm leaving ski season. I love skiing. How can I be leaving skiing to go sit in silence? That seems so stupid. And I go off to go to this meditation retreat, and I have so much transformation over the week. I'm like, how can I not do this? This is amazing. This is so much better than skiing, and this is the best thing I could possibly be doing. And each retreat was more and more of a deeper look into myself and my connection with what is of source. And by the third retreat, and this is to answer your question, how did you get into this coaching and teaching? At the third retreat, I sat down. It was the first morning in meditation, and I had what I can only describe as a divine download, where the way I can describe it in words, even though words don't really describe it, is it was like this portal opened in the top of my head, and this information came through me of exactly what I was going to be doing, who I was serving, how the room was set up, the name of my business, what I was wearing, what was in the room, a flip chart, a whiteboard, some chairs. It was in such incredible detail. I thought, where I'm supposed to be meditating? What is going on? And it took me about 20, 30 minutes to settle down and just listen. And then when I realized what was happening, I started to take notes and write down what was coming through me. And 3 weeks later, I taught a workshop on authentic living when I returned home.
Wow, 3 weeks. That's fabulous. How quick you turned.
Yeah.
Completely got on board.
Yeah, it was so clear. It was so clear. There was no doubt in my mind. And there was no room for doubt. It was such clarity. And from there, I started private coaching and teaching workshops and retreats. And I had been teaching some meditation classes up to that point, and continued with those and expanded on those. So that's how I came to be doing what I'm doing.
I love it. And it's interesting because I didn't realize that meditation, you're letting go of your thoughts, but it's also a time where amazing things can come to you.
Yes. Yeah. It can open up channels to this greater energy that we're all a part of, whether you call it oneness or source or grace or God. When we take the quiet time to be with that, and it doesn't necessarily mean our thoughts stop. Meditation is about shifting the relationship with thoughts, not stopping thoughts. But when we take that time to have moments of presence, not being present all the time, but when we have moments of presence, that space, even for a half a second where we're in now, that can create the space for that connection to source.
Something that I was just talking to my husband about the other day was that, I listen to all these people across the world who are just doing amazing things and really just bright lights on the planet. I listen to them or watch them. And something that's really interesting, and it's newer, is that most of them mention that meditation is part of their lives. All these people that I look up to, meditation is becoming really something a tool that people across the board are using. And I'm talking like, top CEO. It's not, I feel like it used to have a connotation of a very spiritual person. And it's just now it seems across the board, people are using meditation as a tool to calm them, to direct them, and to just empower them throughout their life.
Yes.
Have you noticed that it's becoming a lot more popular?
Yeah. It's much more in the mainstream, and a lot more people are bringing it into their lives. And I would say, and this is my opinion, I would say it's needed more now than it ever has been, with
I agree.
Distractions of technology and the busyness of people's lives that it can become an addiction.
And that's what I was asking my husband. I said, so do you think that now, because we are so stimulated at all the time, that we are actually, it's going to become a huge force to try to help everyone calm their minds, take them away from the stimulus so they can just be? You think that's going to be a huge thing that's going to have to happen with when we live in a society that's just constantly stimulating our minds in all different directions?
I know that it has to come from the individual. And people need it, but it also has to come from that place of calling within, like what you experienced in the sauna of, I need to meditate.
Yes, the sauna.
Yeah.
That's like my place. I always get the stuff in the sauna, I swear.
Exactly, because you're in this place of presence in the sauna. It's allowing you to relax and tune in, right? And so when people have those moments, it's whether they listen to that voice, they act on it, right? And there's more and more people that are acting on that inner voice, that inner guidance of finding meditation. And they might find it through many different avenues. Meditation is in most traditions, and it's also being taught outside of any kind of religious context. So you can do mindfulness-based stress reduction. You can do mindfulness for veterans. Mindfulness is taught in yoga. Mindfulness,
walking. You can be mindful with everything you do. Or
it's being taught. It's being brought into the school systems now because there's over, I think it's 75 proven benefits of meditation and not one side effect or detriment to it.
Right.
And I think that that's pretty rare for us as humans, that we can put that kind of stamp of approval, if you want to call it that, onto something.
Do you work with younger kids? Have you ever done like a meditation class for younger ones?
I have not. No. I wouldn't say working with children is my forte.
Well, that's good. It's always good to know. I have to agree with you there because I worked with children for many years, and now it's just not part of my plan anymore. I don't know. But
it's not my gift to this world. I have other. Yeah.
So I want to talk about when I was taking the class from you. In the middle of the class, you told the class that you were starting to suffer from some EMF sensitivities, and that was sort of changing the way you were interacting in the world. And I want you to sort of talk about that, mostly focusing on how you were able to work through that.
Yes, that's a great question. I'm very passionate about that as well. I started to have EMF sensitivity. It happened overnight, and EMF stands for electromagnetic field sensitivity, which is the technology. When we use technology, computers, cell phones, Wi-Fi, laptops, iPads, all that stuff, it all emits this electromagnetic field. And my body became sensitive to it overnight. It literally happened in a 24-hour period after I'd been on the computer more than usual, which was about 10 hours for me over a week, right? I'm not one to use the computer a lot, but I was on it for about 10 hours over one particular week. I had been stressed that week. I was creating a website, writing a lot of copy, getting deadlines done for my website developer, and snap, overnight I woke up, I tried to get on the computer, and I felt so sick. And it became very apparent that the illness I was feeling was related to using the computer, it was related to using the cell phone. And I couldn't use either one for more than a minute without feeling sick. And so it greatly limited my ability to interact in the world for a while, for several months. And my mom was helping me write emails, and friends were helping research what was happening for me because I couldn't do it myself.
I know in this day and age, that's very debilitating because we are so computer focused and technology focused.
Yeah. Just going to the doctor, there was a computer at the receptionist desk, and then a computer in the waiting room, and the computer in the doctor's office. And so life became very fearful. Like anywhere I went, I'm like, oh my God, there's 10 people in here and they all have cell phones on and they're talking on them or they're using them, and there's 3 computers over there. And so life became very skewed for me. It was, like I said, very fearful, and it was teaching me a lot about letting go, because I kept wanting to try and control it and saying, I can manage this. And so I kept letting go of that. And 6 months after that began, I started to have chronic pain. And I had chronic pain in my hips from hip bursitis, which I'd had for several years, but not to the severity I'd had it at this point. And then chronic back pain. So that began 6 months after the EMF stuff started. And that isolated my world more so. And I went into the state of intense anger, and
which is that has to be a sort of a weird place as a meditation teacher, and focusing your life on being heart driven with your heart, acting with your heart. That anger, that's quite a polarity,
It is, yeah. And I had never experienced anger like that. Like I was in fits of rage, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know where it was coming from. And this was after being in pain for about 2.5 months or so. Pain it was hard to focus on anything. It was like at that level 6 pain, level 7 maybe, and on the 1 to 10 scale. And I was working with that in meditation. The one thing that I could do was a compassion meditation for myself. Like that was the one thing that was helpful, was having compassion for myself during that time. And I moved forward with physical therapy. I started going to PT 4 days a week. Things are mildly shifting, not much. I started taking pain medications about 4 months after the pain began, and that helped. It brought the pain down a couple notches so that I could start interacting some with the world. Again, I wasn't able to be on the cell phone or the computer much, so I spent a lot of time in my house just lying on my back, or I'd go out and walk. I could walk like a 1/4 mile and flat terrain and lie down on my thermarest and look up at the sky.
Which had to be so hard for you because you're such an active person.
So active, yeah. So it was a really different shift in perspective of life at this point. And I started noticing things, forced me to slow down a lot and look at things. And I'm like, what's the freaking lesson in this? What am I supposed to do? Another freaking growth opportunity. Awesome. And so I had my sarcastic side and was trying to find humor in it. And then I'm working with the anger. and the pain and the EMF sensitivity, and I'm working with acceptance. I'm like, right, the Buddhist path, acceptance. I can accept this. I can accept that I have pain. And then other moments I'm like, screw this. I don't want to accept.
Yeah, exactly. I can't live like this,
I want my life back, right?
Yeah.
And that led me to doing some research. So, and again, not doing research online, I go to books. I am an avid reader and I love books. And someone recommended this book called You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
I love that book.
Love it. And
love it so much. Everyone should read that book.
Exactly. It's amazing. And so I started just in the first chapter. I was completely floored by what's possible when the author, Dr. Joe Dispenza, heals his back in 9 weeks, his broken back in 9 weeks with his mind.
Because didn't they told him he would never walk again, I thought.
Yeah, without surgery, without having a metal rod.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that he'd be in pain the rest of his life. And so he defied all statistics for me in that story. And I began to think, well, what if I could run again? And what if I could ride my bike again? And what if I could dance again? And I started to see life differently. And it started to shift my mindset, and the anger eased considerably. And I would spend these hour-long meditations imagining myself running and biking again instead of sitting in compassion and misery. Not that compassion is miserable, but it was a really big shift in the way that I had been thinking. And
it's a little bit different, right? Because in meditation, you're not usually imagining your future so much per se. So that's sort of a different type of meditation.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was a really different way of meditating, like imagining myself healed versus being in a mindset of acceptance, right? So I started to see in this different realm of like, okay, acceptance is part of it, but it's not all of it, because it will keep the body stuck in illness and dis-ease and discomfort if we just keep accepting without imagining, without asking the what if I could do this again questions, right? And it really started to shift things for me. So I read that book, I was doing those meditations, and then someone else recommended I read this book called Wired for Healing by Annie Hopper.
I love that book too.
Yeah. So I read this book, and it has stories about people healing from EMF sensitivity and from chemical sensitivity and food sensitivities and mold sensitivities and Lyme's disease and PTSD and chronic pain. And I read this, I finished reading it, and I thought, this is what I need to go do this program. Like this, what if I could be healed of EMF sensitivity? And I, a month later, went to this program. It was down in Santa Fe is one place that they offer it. And I went down with my, all my treatment for my chronic pain. I had my Thermarest to sit on. I had my pain meds. I had ice packs for my hips. I had a heating pad for my back. And I show up with all my accoutrements. And by the third day of this workshop, which again is utilizing the power of the mind to heal the body, I ran 200 feet the third day. By the fourth day, I ran a quarter mile.
Wow.
I also
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I know. I threw away my pain medication that day. I stopped using the Thermarest to sit on that day, the fourth day. And by the fifth day, I went out for a good 2-mile walk, which I hadn't been able to do that for 7 months, something like that. And then a week later, I was running 2 to 3 miles. By 3 weeks later, I was running 4 to 5 miles. And after a month, I was running 8 to 10 miles, as much as I wanted. Elevation gain, loss, didn't matter. I could go out for 3-hour runs every day if I wanted, with no rest days, and I'm still like that. So,
Wow.
yeah,
That's just amazing. And what is that? What are you doing
yeah,
to rewire your brain?
yeah. So, what I want to do is, well, yeah, I'll answer that question and then return to the EMF sensitivity and what happened with that. And in rewiring the brain, and this goes for what Dr. Joe Dispenza writes about, as well as Annie Hopper, when we combine a future visualization, so we imagine ourselves healed, combine that with an elevated emotional state of the heart, that sends out from our brain, it releases growth and repair chemicals such as serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin, that go through the body and that actually cause the cells to regenerate and grow, versus being in survival and degenerate. So now you have the opposite of what chronic stress creates, like cortisol and adrenaline. And you have these growth and repair chemicals rush through the body that are 100 times greater than any drug that you can take over the counter or prescribed. And
isn't that interesting that our brain and our bodies can create all these different hormones and drugs that are so much more powerful than what we're prescribed, and there's no side effects,
Yeah, there's no side effects. I mean, it's all just benefit, like meditation is. It's all just benefit to have this flushing through your body for an hour a day. And so that's why healings like that can happen so quickly, is you have that happening. And the cells, this is really remarkable, is the cells, and though your whole body doesn't know whether you're thinking it or you're actually doing it. So if you imagine yourself running, your body's muscles are actually twitching as if they're running. Or if you imagine yourself lifting weights, you can actually build muscle mass just by imagining yourself lifting weights. So
I've been trying to do that with my stomach. I've been imagining that six pack that I've never had. I'll let you guys all know how that goes.
Yeah, exactly. So you're doing the stomach crunches. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's a really, it's phenomenal. The body is amazing. And it doesn't mean, everyone's going to have these miraculous healings in a few days like I did. It might take 6 months. It might take a year. But when you keep putting those growth repair chemicals through the body every day for an hour, minimum an hour a day, things start to change at some point. They will. And people are healing from all kinds of things that Western medicine says you can't be healed by, like Parkinson's disease and Lyme's disease and strokes and cancer.
It's phenomenal. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. The power of our brain on everything around us, including our bodies.
Remarkable. And when we have that elevated emotional state, that's also a frequency and energy that emanates out, and other people pick that up, whether they're conscious of it or not. So it's not only you experiencing it, you're sharing it. It's a ripple effect with the people around you. So it's really powerful stuff. So that's probably one of the more important pieces of that healing. And there are other pieces, like you begin to slowly train your body back into running or back into using computers, or being around perfumes or things like that. It's not like an all or nothing thing. And you elevate your emotional state as much as possible throughout the day, because that shows over and over again how much that helps the body heal. And then another really important aspect is really shifting the way old patterns of the mind that keep you stuck. Like for me, I was body checking, how much, what's my pain like this morning? What's number is it on the scale? And focusing on the pain. You have to stop doing that. You have to stop talking about your illness or your injury or your ailment, because that keeps the brain stuck in that injury or illness.
It's interesting you say that, because I just had Ruth Phillips on the show, and she healed herself from cancer. But that was the number one thing she said. She didn't mention these books or anything, but she said that was the number one thing, is that she had to focus on health versus illness. And that was the number one thing that helped her.
Yeah, it's so critical and so important. The brain has to think greater than it feels. Like, you have to think greater than you feel and think about health and not about illness. And
sometimes I really wonder if that's even bigger, if that's a bigger picture, so that we need to focus on, the great things happening on the planet versus the continuous destruction, or the people that are, organic farming and doing all these great farming practices versus the pesticide issues. And I wonder if, as a mass consciousness, as we focus on, and we all get, as a group, we all get so freaked out about certain issues.
Exactly.
But if we could just move our attention to, wow, there's a whole group of people fighting for or working with our water, trying to bring out all these, water harvesting and using our water. And if we focus all of our energy on that, would the other stuff sort of just, drift away, because we're not focusing on it so much?
Or lessen. Yeah.
At least lessen,
become less intense. And what you're speaking to, Theresa, is what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls the vibrational frequency. And it's not a woo-woo term. It's actually scientifically studied. Like, you can measure it with scientific equipment, that every emotion has a frequency related to it. And fear is one of those lower vibrational frequencies. So when we're in a state of fear, that's the frequency, that's the energy that our body holds, and it keeps everything working in a dysfunctional or incoherent way. And when we raise that vibrational frequency with looking at the good, with the gratitude, with the celebrations, with the joy, then that's the energy that's impacting ourselves and the planet in a really healthy way. Mm-hmm.
And you're right. He does talk about that, because it's documented by them studying the atom.
Exactly.
And the different energies.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So I want to talk about the EMF healing, because there's a really important piece in that I think people would really enjoy.
Because you are healed. You've healed your EMF.
I am healed. Sensitivity. And that,
woohoo!
Yeah, big celebration.
Freedom!
Yeah, I can be back in the world. Yeah. So, it had been a year of having EMF sensitivity, and then I healed of the chronic pain. And then over about 3 months of doing this program of retraining my brain, it had dropped about 50%, the sensitivity had. And then at about 4 months, I ended up sleeping near a Wi-Fi modem for a couple nights, really close to one, which was outside my training zone, which is what they call when you do more than your limbic system is ready for, the fight or flight part of your brain that's in overreactive mode. And that became a really critical juncture where I was then going into this state of survival of not having a place that I could sleep, because I was now sensitive to sleeping with Wi-Fi. And so I went on this 7 weeks of survival, like sleeping in these really gross places that didn't have Wi-Fi, just so I could sleep.
Because you couldn't be around. So your Wi-Fi sensitivity actually got a lot worse.
Yep, it got worse. And I was sleeping in these really gross places. I had happened to be in Costa Rica at the time. And I came back to California like, I'll go sleep, go camping with my mom. My mom and I love to camp together. So, we can go to the campgrounds and there won't be anything there. And then I discovered there's Wi-Fi in the campgrounds now with Wi-Fi.
Oh my gosh, they have Wi-Fi in the campgrounds. Well, you just can't get away from technology anymore. Oh,
the campgrounds, Wi-Fi coming from different RVs. And so I was taking my thermarest and my sleeping bag and marching off into the hills and finding places to sleep. And then I thought, well, I'll go to my sister's place in Joshua Tree. She lives in the middle of the desert. I could at least sleep there. And I get there, my brother's like, oh, I just installed this super powerful Wi-Fi modem. I'm like, oh my gosh.
oh my gosh.
Oh. So
this whole time, are you still trying to train your brain to be okay with EMFs?
I'm still doing the practice, but I'm wallowing in doubts right now at this, at this juncture, at this time period. I'm like, oh my God, what if I just need to go be one of those EMF refugees and go, live out in the woods somewhere where I'm not around anybody and no technology, and I need to get a tent, those I forgot what they're called, but these wired mesh tents you can sleep in.
Oh, that protect you from it?
Yeah, that protect. I'm like, what if I need to do that? Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so I'm at my sister's and I take her tent and I walk about 1,000 feet from their house and I set it up in this private land next door, away from anything. And that's where I stayed for the next month. Like I would sleep there at night and then spend a few hours in the house during the day, which I could manage to train myself, and then go back to the tent and gain my strength back and my energy back at that point, my sanity back, because I felt like I was going crazy there for a while, like not having a safe place to sleep. And then I got a coaching call from the program that I was doing, and that was really critical for me. I had a great coaching call. She got me back on track and helping me point out some things for myself. And then I came back to my hometown of Bozeman, and I couldn't sleep in my house yet because that was in downtown Bozeman with Wi-Fi in the surrounding homes. So I had a dear friend that offered me a room in her house to sleep in, who was out on this ranch. And I slept at their house during the night, and then I'd spend days at my house just training my brain to be back in technology again. And there was a point during that time period, it's now been a year and a half of EMF sensitivity, and 6 months into doing the program that I was doing. And I read this book called The White Book by Ramtha. And this was really incredible. And it was the same book that Dr. Joe Dispenza read when he healed his back in 9 weeks.
Huh. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, the first half didn't resonate much for me, but the second half was so profound. And I picked that up and I started reading the passages that really resonated for me. And that's what I started meditating on. And what it talks about is when we hope for something, when we hope to be healed, there's still a lot of room for doubt. And doubt has a pretty low vibrational frequency. So it keeps when we have a lot of doubt, it keeps our body in that illness, in that state of being. But it's an important first step. We need hope to take that next step, right? And then belief is a higher frequency, and it also still has room for doubt. You can believe and you can still have doubt, right? And yeah, and
it's true.
And it's also an important stage for us to go through, believing that we can heal, or believing we can shift our life in a certain way. And once we move into the knowing, I know I am healed. I know I will heal. I know I'm healed. It eliminates all room for doubt. There is no room for doubt. And what can happen is when you're in that knowing state, the body can heal in an instant. A snap of a finger, the body can heal in that deep state of knowing. And so I started meditating on this, Theresa. I started meditating with this in mind. And I kept telling myself, I am healed. I am totally healed. I can do whatever I want. I can use the computer whenever I want. I can use the cell phone whenever I want. And I kept repeating it over and over and over again, an hour every day in meditation. And I incorporated it into my rewiring practice. And within 4 days of doing that, I could use the cell phone and the computer for the first time every day.
Oh my gosh, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Yeah.
So the knowing, so what did you do with that? So you just started telling yourself that you are healed.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I am healed.
I am healed. So you jumped to I am healed instead of I will be healed, or
Yep. I am healed. I can use the computer every day. I can use a cell phone every day. I can go wherever I want. I can do whatever I want. And I kept saying that until it became deeper and deeper and deeper into my subconscious mind. And I even had these moments of like really incredible energy is how I would describe it, but it doesn't quite describe it. It's like this incredible energy that was coming out of my chest. Like, I don't know the right words for it to describe it, but it was really incredible experience to go to that deepest knowing. Yeah.
This is such a great example of the power of the mind, though.
It is.
When you clicked over and decided, I know I am healed. I am healed.
Yep.
The power of that is just like your brain clicked over and was okay with EMFs that you had been struggling with so hard for, over a year and a half.
Yeah, exactly. It was amazing.
And I think, it's you have to be ready for that.
Yep.
You have to be ready. And so you were obviously ready for that information and ready to actively implement it in your life.
Yeah.
But it's so powerful. It just gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, it was really incredible. And I continued to do the rewiring practice I'd been doing for 7 months by that point. I continued doing with that. I totally believed in it and knew, not more than believed, I knew the power of how much it had shifted my life. And I kept doing it. And 2 months, month and a half, no, 5 weeks after that, I could start sleeping with Wi-Fi again. And then I moved back in my house. And so it was a 10 months total of.
That must have felt amazing to move back into your house. The power of just being at home.
Oh my God. Yeah, so that was such a gift. And I would say to anyone who wants to heal or is struggling with that, like, you can heal. It is so within reach. If you believe that you can heal, you can heal. And it's amazing. Like, it's been such a powerful experience for me. It's what my calling is now, is bringing meditation and the power of the mind to healing the body, to being your most joyful, vibrant self, to bringing to light your dreams and your realities that you want to creating a new reality. And it's given me such an incredible shift in my life. Like, I feel so much more joyful, grateful, happy, and at ease on a daily level, more so than I ever have in my life. And it's extraordinary. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, thank you so much for sharing this story, because it's just so empowering. And it's a reminder to all of us, that we are such powerful beings. And something just like reading that white book and getting that information can change everything for you. And so it's just so powerful. And I thank you so much for sharing your story and continuously sharing your story and helping others heal. And I want to tell people how Angela is a great coach. She has a lot of great information on her website. I love her blogs. They make my days and they make me think about a lot of things. And so I want can you tell us what is your website and how can we follow you and get a hold of you?
You can reach me at angelamariepatnode.com. That's Angela. Marie is Marie, and Patnode, P as in Paul, AT as in Tom, NODE.com. And there you'll have access to my free ebook, From Anxiety to Peace, 3 Simple Steps to a Heart-Centered Meditation Practice. And once you sign up for that, you'll get information on what we talked about earlier with anxiety, the 2 types of anxiety that I referred to earlier in the podcast, and 3 really easy steps to start a daily meditation practice. And you can also reach me by my phone, 406-600-6307, or by email, info@angelamariepatnode.com. Can't wait to hear from you, and thank you so much, Theresa, for today's chat. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much, Angela. We'll have to have you back on, and it's just been such a pleasure.
I'm Theresa Gabrielle, and you've been listening to The Good with Theresa G. You can follow The Good with Theresa G on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you haven't yet, go to the Apple Podcast and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another inspiring conversation. Thank you for listening.